Okay, so if you ever had any doubt as to where the snowflakes come from, you'll find out now. A snowflake, by the way, is not a person who just reacts negatively to some sort of issue or something like that or gets mad. It's a person who just emotionally cannot handle adversity. From an emotional standpoint, they melt, and that's why we call them snowflakes. Okay. Anyway, where do they come from? Well, the headline here will give you a clue. George Floyd's toxicology report pinned to Black History Month display at Duke. And this is by Gabriella Fonrouge. And she is she's perfect evidence of why I've always said journalism degree is the candy store of the university. Okay, we're going to see this here a little bit. This is brand new, by the way, March 26th. Okay, here we go. Duke University is investigating how a printout of George Floyd's toxicology report with comments insinuating his death was related to drugs ended up pinned to a Black History Month bulletin board display on campus, according to the school and reports. Now, keep in mind, insinuating his death was related to drugs. Think about the connotation of the word insinuating there. It sort of mocks it as saying like, well, his death was related to drugs. Oh, come on, get real. That's what the word insinuating sort of implies. The flyer was found Saturday pinned to a display honoring Black victims of police violence. Gee, I wonder who was pictured there. And was inscribed with handwritten remarks in pink pen. Oh, that pink pen, it's terrible. That said, mix of drugs, presence, and difficulty breathing. Something wrong there with the English. Overdose? Good man? Use of fake currency is a felony. Actually, it's a misdemeanor, but okay, never mind that. Keep in mind, that was what was written. Okay, that's an opinion that somebody has. He's raising the question about whether George Floyd died of a drug overdose or was killed by the police officer. And by the way, we're having a trial to determine that. But Duke University is going to treat this thing as, well, that police officer is guilty, and anybody who defends him is racist. You don't think so? Hang on. Floyd, who died after a police officer knelt on his neck for more than 8 minutes, had allegedly used a counterfeit $20 bill at a Minneapolis store before his death. The incident sparked massive anti-racism protests across the country. Okay, we know that. Notice, by the way, it doesn't say who died after a police officer knelt on his neck for more than 8 minutes and after he ingested drugs. Okay? They're trying to make the claim here that the police officer killed Floyd. Okay? That's their opinion. Okay? But it's not factual. We don't know yet. Find out when we do the trial. So there's a toxicology report, and you got little pin marks there, and there, yep, George Floyd there. So as somebody, I can't read it, I tried, but they had a comment about George Floyd. So they're praising him as a Black victim of police violence, I suppose. Originally, the Hennepin County Medical Examiner announced Floyd, 46, had recent methamphetamine use and fentanyl intoxication, as well as hypertension and coronary artery disease, and said they were possible contributing factors to his death. Okay, all right? There's controversy here. However, 2 doctors who conducted an independent autopsy of Floyd said he had no underlying health issues that could have contributed to his death, and the cause was asphyxiation. So there's controversy here. There's some people saying they could have been killed by the drugs, some are not. Gee, I wonder what we can do in these cases where we're not sure. Oh, I know. Let's have a trial where we'll bring in medical experts and we'll let a jury decide what they think, okay? But keep in mind, Duke University is not taking that approach. Their approach is that police officer is guilty, and anybody who dares say otherwise is committing an offense. Matt Moan, the freshman who found the flyer, called the act audacious and said the paper was taken down about 30 minutes after he reported it to his resident advisor. Well, if you saw the flyer there and you really think that flyer is a real problem, and it's going to cause real harm, why don't you take it down? We left it up for 30 minutes. And if somebody hadn't taken it down, it would have stayed up. There's nothing to stop him from taking down the toxicology report if he feels that it doesn't belong there. All of a sudden, someone comes up and is essentially sticking a thumb in the face of every black person, saying his life didn't matter, that he wasn't a good person because of one $20 bill, Moan said. No, that's not what they said, and this is where you become disingenuous. They said that he might have died from a drug overdose and that he was not necessarily a good man because he was a drug addict, okay? Now, I'm not saying that that is the case, and I'm not saying that's even a good opinion to hold, but it's not because of a $20 bill. And that's not what the comment was. I was just really, really surprised by it, that someone would put that much effort into trying to strip someone of their humanity for no reason. Okay, so how much effort does it take? You got a pen and you post it on the board and you walk away. You write a couple of comments. In fact, it kind of demonstrates to me there wasn't much effort put into this at all. They didn't even use complete sentences. And how much effort would it have taken you to take it down? More than you were wanting to expend. Another freshman who was black saw a photo of the flyer and said he was honestly terrified. Honestly terrified by somebody pinning a toxicology report to a bulletin board and writing some comments down that they didn't think that George Floyd was such a good dude. And that terrifies this individual. Snowflake. That's a snowflake. When you become terrified by something that is not terrifying, that's kind of the mark of a snowflake. That happened right down the hall from where I sleep, from where I'm supposed to be safe. You know what, Michael? Michael Manns, by the way, is his name. Michael, you are safe. The person who pinned that on the bulletin board is probably not going to attack you. It doesn't evoke any sense of violence. It doesn't portray a violent person. Just a person who disagrees with George Floyd being a hero and decides, you know what, I'm going to print something out and pin it on there for people to see. Now, if that evokes violence, then what do you say about the people who are tearing the hell out of towns and stuff, throwing chairs through windows and lighting cars on fire? He would probably say, well, but nobody was hurt. But you pin a note to a board, and that's a violent act, according to him. That terrifies him. The thought that it could be someone I've lived with all these months really terrified me. Well, if you lived with him for all these months and he hasn't done anything to you, maybe your emotions have gotten away from you a little bit, Darren Michael. In a letter to the student body, oh, here we go. Duke said the Office of Student Conduct and Community Standards, the Office for Institutional Equity, and the Duke University Police Department are probing the incident and asked anyone with information to come forward. Oh, here we go. Okay, so first of all, we have two agencies of the university involved in investigating this. And you know why? They have nothing else to do. What does the Office for Institutional Equity do all day? You know what the police department does? They patrol. They fill out a lot of paperwork from any incidences that have occurred, but they do a lot of patrolling. They answer calls for people who have gotten into trouble. We know what they do. We know what the maintenance department does. They fix pipes and stuff. Got a leaky roof, they come and fix it. That's what the maintenance department does. What does the Office for Institutional Equity do all day? And the Office of Student Conduct and Community Standards. Well, that office fields a lot of cheating reports, okay? But these are offices that are staffed with probably a lot of students and faculty and vice presidents all pulling down salaries, and they have nothing to keep themselves occupied. And so here's something that comes along that will give them some sense of purpose. So they're going to jump all over this. And then they got the Duke University Police Department investigating what appears to be a non-crime. I'm not certain the police department can do anything here. What statute was violated? If the university wants the police to go and find out who did this and there's no crime committed, then you're asking the police department to act as private detectives. and they're not really allowed to do that. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know what the state laws are there, but if the police department is investigating a non-crime, don't know. Seems a little shaky to me. It says here, the caption, the flyer was found on Saturday pinned to a display honoring black victims of police violence and was inscribed with handwritten remarks in pink pen. Guys, the pink pen was probably just the closest pen the person had. I don't think there was a message behind it. The letter said if Duke students are found to be responsible for the flyer, sanctions will be issued. Okay. For pinning a government document to a bulletin board, you're going to sanction the student for that. Now here's an interesting quote. Any incident that is motivated in whole or part by an individual's race warrants acceleration or elevation of sanctioning due to the impact on the community. So any incident motivated in whole or part by an individual's race warrants sanctions. What if the students write in their essay something that George Floyd was only killed because he's black? You're going to sanction that student? What if the student writes in there instead that he doesn't think that George Floyd died at the police hands, that he might have died from a drug overdose? Are you going to sanction that student? Because that student did pretty much what this other student did who pinned us on the board. You can see what's going to be happening to academic freedom here. If I'm a professor of U.S. history and we're covering the George Floyd trial, I have to take certain stances. If I don't, I could be sanctioned according to this. Okay, if the investigation does not identify a responsible student, we will inform the community of that outcome on or before April 15th as part of our monthly conduct update. We are also working closely with our campus life departments to provide direct outreach to black students. Additional support resources available to all students are included below the signature of this message. So they even provide extra support for students who need it because of this incident. Can you imagine what has happened at our universities? Can you imagine what has happened to academic freedom? Keep in mind, the original object that created this whole thing was a government document with a few handwritten notes on there, none of them racist. It was pinned to a bulletin board, and that's it. And that's all it takes to bring out two agencies and the police department to spend all this time and effort to try to hunt down the guilty party. If you want to do the investigation, I could do that. I mean, I could do it for you for very little money. I would just go knock around on a few doors, see if there are any surveillance cameras available. If there are no cameras available and nobody says that they saw anything, it's case closed. Now, you apply sanctions against this student, could be facing a lawsuit. Yes, I realize Duke University is a private university, but there are still laws that apply here. So I'll let the university figure that one out. But to throw out, let's say that they do sanctions and they throw the student out of school, they're going to get sued for that one. I mean, if you cannot pin a toxicology report to a bulletin board, then you have no academic freedom whatsoever. Now, by the way, I don't think it was a very good thing to do. The Black History Month presentation is put together probably by a club of some sort. That's their deal. Leave your stuff off of there. Okay, I want to read the letter that was sent out to the students from Duke University because it does include a kind of comment here. It's a little bit worrisome. Student Affairs Department. This message is being sent to all Duke undergraduate students. Why not graduate students? I don't know. Dear students, we are writing to make you aware of an incident on East Campus that is being investigated as a possible violation of the Duke Community Standard and the policy on prohibited discrimination and harassment. Details of the incident. On Saturday, March 20th, a first-year student found a flyer affixed to a Black History Month bulletin board. The flyer's contents, which appeared to be a toxicology report from George Floyd's autopsy, had handwritten remarks that commented on the May 2020 death of Mr. Floyd in Minneapolis. Notice it doesn't say what the actual comment said, it just said it had comments. Next steps. The Office of Student Conduct and Community Standards, Office for Institutional Equity, and the Police Department are currently investigating this incident to determine if more can be learned about the circumstances surrounding this event. Anyone who has more information can report it here. This is where it gets interesting. Possible outcomes. If Duke students are found to be responsible for this act, the Office of Conduct and Community Standards will issue sanctions to the responsible students. Notice it doesn't say anything about doing an investigation such as asking the student for his reasons. There is no recourse, according to this letter. If you are found to be guilty of this, you will be sanctioned. Your defense matters nothing to these people. And it goes on to say, any incident that is motivated in whole or part by an individual's race warrants acceleration or elevation of sanctioning due to the impact on the community. Although I don't know what impact there is, but okay. Any conduct outcomes will be confidential under FERPA, and boy, you know that they wish they could go ahead and divulge the name of the student. But OSCCS will report aggregate conduct outcomes for the 2020-21 academic year in August of 2021. Okay, so there's nothing else here that we don't have already stated elsewhere. Again, if you pinned this note, the toxicology report, on the bulletin board, you are guilty and you will be sanctioned. We will not allow you to defend yourself one iota. That's Duke University. Tell me what you think in the comments. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.